Alright guys, we're going to talk about trade relations between China and Australia, and to kick this off I would just like to give you this piece of information. Australia exported 729 million litres of wine in 2019-20, valued at 2.8 billion. The top destination market was mainland China, accounting for 39% of the exports by value. And the domestic market is only relevant to this to show that we export a lot more than we make for domestic use. And last thing, 39% of 2.8 billion, well over $1 billion. Now I have a clip I'd like to show you from the 20th of June 2021.
The Chinese government put countervailing duties on Australian wine ranging between 116% to 220%. That has had a serious impact on the Australian wine industry. Our exports have fallen from $1.1 billion to approximately $20 million. As a result, and following close consultation with the Australian wine industry, and I thank them for the cooperative way they've worked with the government, we've decided to take this wine dispute to the World Trade Organisation. As a result, we'll be asking for WTO consultations with the Chinese government on this wine dispute. We stand ready to sit down with the Chinese government to work out this current dispute with them. But as a result of our bilateral discussions taking place at the officials level, not being able to resolve this issue, we're going to the World Trade Organisation.
4 to 6 days later.
We've been notified just after 5 o'clock that China are initiating consultations through the WTO dispute settlement body with Australia on anti-dumping and countervailing measures we've put in place on wind towers, on stainless steel sinks and on railway wheels. Obviously China has the right to take this action, but Australia will be vigorously defending our system that we have in place for accounting for the measures that we put in place where we think there is injury occurring here in Australia to particular industries.
Alright, what you basically watched was on the 20th of June 2021, Australia went to the World Trade Organisation to have a bit of a cry about how China's handling the tariffs with Australian wine. And then a couple days later, China turned around and went and did pretty much the same thing, but instead of it being wine, it was over wheels and sinks. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a good understanding of what's going on. Alright, well first of all, we should quickly go through what tariffs are. Okay, a tariff is a type of tax that's imposed by a government on imported goods from another country. This tax is paid by the consumer in the country that imposed the tariff, therefore jacking up the price to buy imported goods. So it could potentially act as a source of revenue, but it seems like the main goal with a tariff like that is to disincentivize importing whatever it is to try and safeguard that industry domestically. Alright, to make sense of this whole situation with trade in China and Australia, we're going to need to understand anti-dumping and countervailing. So for that information, we're going to the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. Anti-dumping and countervailing system. The Anti-Dumping Commission helps Australian industry by managing Australia's anti-dumping and countervailing system. We investigate claims that dumped and subsidised imports have injured Australian industry. Dumping generally occurs when a company exports a product into Australia at a price that is lower than the price charged in the country of manufacture. Subsidisation is a financial benefit an exporter receives from a government. This subsidy may allow the exporter to sell their goods to Australia at a lower price. Anti-dumping and countervailing. An anti-dumping measure is an additional duty on dumped imports that have injured Australian industry. A countervailing measure is an additional duty on subsidised imports that have injured Australian industry. So long story short, dumping is essentially exporting something for an unreasonably low price. And so governments can put in anti-dumping measures, and if that anti-dumping anti-dumping measure is charging a tax on those imported goods. That's a tariff, you see? And the countervailing is another percentage for if the imported good was subsidized by the foreign government. So we're all on the same page? What is a anti-dumping measure? It's a tariff. What's the type of tariff? Countervailing. Oh, and how they're handling this whole wine issue, it just gives you flashbacks to the whole barley issue. Let's have a quick look back at June 2020.
Flashback.
WTO processes, as I acknowledged in my remarks, take longer than we would wish to be the case in an ideal world. It could take years. So this is about achieving, as much as anything, a systemic outcome as well as a specific outcome. We want a specific outcome that recognises Australia's grain growers and barley industry operate in nothing other than entirely commercial ways and with the utmost of integrity. But we also want a systemic outcome that identifies the fact that the decisions that have been reached by Chinese authorities lack basis, are not underpinned by facts and evidence, and ultimately leads, we hope, to change in relation to their practices.
End of flashback.
I got this from the Australian Export Grains Innovation Centre. Major markets for Australian barley. Australia is a major malting and feed barley exporter, accounting for 30 to 40% of the world's exported malting barley and 20% of the global feed barley exports. And then it gives you a little bit of an idea of how much we export to other countries. And here you can see that we send more to China than we use domestically. Now, do I believe that Australia would allow something like this dumping happen? Well, yes, because they allow all sorts of dodgy shit. Would I be surprised if this was true? I'd be more surprised if it wasn't true. That goes for the barley and the wine. And of course I do not blame the farmers, not at all. Especially when considering that 80% of Australia's barley exports came from WA. And I'm pretty sure SA is big on the wine. So it's kind of like China's going after us state by state, picking off the ones with small populations first. And I bet you if we have a look at the other things China's putting tariffs on that they usually get from Australia, it's probably like big in each different state. Alright, let's have a quick recap. Okay, so China is imposing anti-dumping countervailing measures on Australian wine. Australia's got a problem with that, so Australia took this to the World Trade Organization.
4 to 6 days later.
China's off to the World Trade Organization to say that they've got a problem with the tariffs Australia put in years ago on stainless steel sinks and railway wheels. So I can imagine China saying, two can play at that game, and also picture them saying, how have you not learnt your lesson from last time?
Flashback.
Like, is that not pretty much the same headline? Just swap out wine for barley. That's all that's really happened here, and change one number in the year. And what came out of this whole barley World Trade Organization venture from last year? Where is that today?
End of flashback.
A disputes panel. Oh yeah. Get better than nothing. Alright, my final thoughts, the final thing I want to say about all this, other than thanks for watching, is I am so fucking furious, absolutely full of rage at every dickhead that would say, oh, we can't bring up human rights, we can't address China and what they're doing to human beings because they're our trade partner, the economy, exports, you know, we can't rock the boat, they're such a big, important trade partner. And then what happens? Fuck it all up without even bringing up human rights. Just fuck it up anyway. Like, it would be a lot easier to stand by our bullshit if we fucked up for a good reason. If we're like, nah, we're not gonna sell you any more of our shit until you stop it with these camps. But no, they didn't fuck over bits of the economy for a noble cause, for a good reason. They just fucked it up because they're useless. Don't forget, Liberal Party's been in charge for like the whole fucking time. Thank you for watching.